Camping is supposed to be a peaceful escape, a crackling fire under the stars, the soothing sounds of nature, but in the dark wilderness, not everything is as it seems. From mysterious strangers lurking outside your tent to unseen creatures watching from the trees, the following real encounters will make you think twice about that next overnight in the woods. These are some of the most disturbing camping encounters ever caught on camera. Viewer discretion is advised. A father and daughter's relaxing forest hike turned into a scene from a horror movie when they stumbled upon a cabin surrounded by hanging mannequins deep in the woods. Gary and his daughter Amica were exploring a forest in Scotland when Amica said she heard voices echoing through the trees. Following the sounds, they discovered a remote shack decorated with dozens of old mannequins, some perched in trees on makeshift ladders, others scattered on the ground. The figures were dressed in tattered clothes and posed eerily, watching the intruders with blank faces. Outside the cabin hung bizarre, unsettling paintings adding to the nightmare scene. There was no sign of who created this disturbing display, but whoever it was clearly went through a lot of trouble to be as creepy as possible. Gary recorded the entire chilling discovery on a video titled "Terrifying Cabin in the Woods, Van Life UK." As they hastily left the area, a car was heard approaching on a nearby trail, sending a jolt of fear through the pair. Thankfully, they made it back to their van without confronting anyone, and to this day the purpose of the mannequin cabin remains a mystery, and locals whisper about who or what maintains that grotesque forest display. It is a reminder that in the wild, you might find human-made horrors lurking just beyond the next tree. A camper's worst nightmare came true when a bear ripped into a tent, and the harrowing encounter was caught on video. In a YouTube video titled "Bear Attacked Me in My Tent," solo camper Gregor from the channel documents the terrifying moment a wild bear invaded his campsite. He had set up camp alone in a dense forest, only one day to be jolted alive by the sound of snapping branches and heavy grunts right outside his thin nylon shelter. Suddenly, a black bear's snout and claws can be seen through the tent fabric, thrashing inches from Gregor's face. In the shaky footage, you can hear Gregor shouting and banging to scare the animal off. Miraculously, the bear retreated after a few tense moments, and Gregor was left unharmed aside from a racing heart. The description of the video posted, quote, "It was scary. A bear attacked my tent in the forest when I was camping alone. It's better not to camp alone. Haha." The video, which was posted in 2023 and now has over 2 million views, is a stark reality check that camping in bear country means you're never alone. Even a quiet moment can turn deadly in an instant if a curious bear decides to investigate your tent. Would you spend the night in a pitch-black cave rumored to be haunted? One brave YouTuber did, and his camera captured unexplained phenomena that sent him running. Australian adventurer Matt accepted a dare to camp overnight in an abandoned cave deep in the outback, believed by locals to be cursed. He filmed his experience in a video titled "Sleeping in a Haunted Cave, Never Again." At first, Matt treats it like any survival trip. He hikes 4 hours to reach the cave and crawls through narrow tunnels to find a spot to camp. By nightfall, however, things take a terrifying turn. As Matt eats his simple dinner by lantern light, a loud metallic clatter echoes from the cave entrance. He swings his camera around to find the heavy iron chain he climbed down, swaying and clanking on its own, even though no wind blows underground. "Did you hear that? Look at my arms. I've got full goosebumps," Matt whispers, showing the camera his hair standing on end. Gathering his courage, he investigates only to hear hissing, almost human-like whispers emanating from deeper in the cavern around 1 a.m. At this point, Matt's nerves break. On camera, his voice shakes as he announces, "I'm getting out of here. That sound was not normal, and I'm scared." He spends the remaining hours of darkness anxiously waiting near the cave's entrance until sunrise finally allows him to escape safely. Matt's footage from that night is bone-chilling. The moving chain and eerie noises suggest that he was not alone in that cave. Whether it was restless spirits or a hidden person, we may never never know for sure, but Matt swears he will never return to that haunted cave.
Next up, we head to the Hessdalen Valley in Norway to discuss unidentified lights periodically spotted in the sky since the 1930s. The Hessdalen lights are this mysterious glowing phenomena that show up in the Hessdalen Valley. Sometimes they're seen during the day, sometimes at night. They can be white, yellow, or red, and have been seen above and below the horizon. They can last for just a few seconds or go on for more than an hour. Sometimes they zip around really fast, other times they sway back and forth, and occasionally they just hang in the air. The lights became especially frequent between 1981 and 84, happening up to 20 times a week. People started traveling to the area hoping to see them, but by 2010 the sightings had decreased to about 10 to 20 per year. In 1998 though, the Hessdalen Automatic Measurement Station, or the Hessdalen AMS, was set up in the valley. It was designed to keep track of and record the mysterious lights when they showed up. Until this day though, they're still not 100% sure what causes them. Next up, we have the discovery of the Saula. Now, this one may not have terrified scientists as much as get them super excited, but anytime a cryptid is found to actually exist, it's pretty incredible. This creature, native to the Annamite Mountains in Vietnam and Laos, has a couple nicknames: the Asian unicorn and the Vu Quang ox. It is an incredibly rare animal, and for a long time, it was completely unknown to the outside world, a mythological creature at best. But in 1992, these animals were discovered to actually exist, at least to researchers outside of the region anyway, and the first photograph of a Saula was taken in 1993. Did you notice that flap on the face that flares out almost like the gill of a fish? Very strange. Cool animals. Next up, we have the whale in the jungle. And no, that's not some bizarre figure of speech. There really was a beached whale found in the Amazon jungle in 2019. This was an incredibly unexpected discovery made on Marajo Island at the mouth of the Amazon River. A 36-foot humpback whale weighing 10 tons was discovered all the way up into the jungle. The whale was a 12-month-old calf and was hidden in the undergrowth about 50 feet from the sea. So experts were pretty confused about how the whale made its way so deep into the jungle. One possible explanation is that rough seas might have tossed the creature out of the water and into the woods, but those must have been some pretty powerful waves. Darlene Silva from SEMA, the Brazilian Environmental Department, explained that the whale was found because scavenging birds were circling above the hidden carcass in the bush. Renita Emin, a marine specialist, was pretty surprised by the find as well, saying, "We're still not sure how it landed here, but we're guessing that the creature was floating close to the shore, and the tide, which has been pretty considerable over the past few days, picked it up and threw it inland into the mangrove." What's also strange about this though is that the humpback whales are usually found in the Bahia area from August to November, so how did one end up on the north coast of Brazil in February? Whales usually migrate to Antarctica after their time in Bahia, so it just makes this find even more strange. Let's talk about more creepy noises though, coming from the woods. Here's another. This video was posted to YouTube by Chris Simpkins, who heard this strange metallic sound coming from the woods near his home one night. Take a listen to this. Yeah, that's a bit creepy, ain't it? The video was taken on September 6th, 2016, at about 8 p.m. in North Smithfield, Rhode Island. In the video description, Chris dispels some theories people had about what the sound could have been, writing, "There was almost no wind last night. We've lived here for a year and never heard this before. Even during the windiest of days, there aren't any trains nearby. And the background noise is just crickets/frogs in my yard, and maybe me crying a bit behind the phone." Anyway, let us know in the comments what you think of this one. Is it aliens? Is there some kind of power tool that can make a noise like that? Let us know what you think. Now, this next story may not sound like much to some of you, but I find this one pretty unsettling, and I wanted to throw it in. I think some of the scariest things we can come across is the absence of anything. Complete silence and isolation. And Reddit user I Don't Care, I Like Dogs made a post about exactly that. They write, "I live in a really remote part of Alaska. I think the scariest thing I've ever encountered is how silent the woods tundra can be in the dead of winter. sprinter. I'm talking like, I feel I'm about to go insane quiet. It's absolutely unnerving. I became hyper aware of my heartbeat, and my breathing sounds like an effing airplane taking off, and I know a lot of people will say, oh, it's because a predator was nearby. No, man, some places up here just have nothing. That's what really freaks me out. I am absolutely alone in this one spot. I could drop dead and no one would ever find my body. And yeah, I just find that kind of unsettling. And finally, we have the lost city of Z. Percy Harrison Fawcett was a British explorer who set out in 1925 to find the lost city he called Z in the Amazon rainforest. Fawcett believed this ancient city held all these untold riches and a sophisticated civilization. Accompanied by his son Jack and friend Rayleigh Rimmel, Fawcett ventured into uncharted territory, never to be seen again. The expedition vanished without a trace, and there were tons of rescue attempts, including one by famed aviator Charles Lindbergh, but no sign of Fawcett or his companions has ever been found. One theory is that Fawcett just died as a result of like all the harsh stuff out there in the jungle. Could have been eaten by an animal or something. Definitely very likely, but there's a more interesting and more intriguing theory that he and his crew may have actually found this lost city deep within the Amazon where they started a new life, living happily ever after down there. Over the years, there have been expeditions that set out to uncover the fate of Fawcett and the lost city of Z, but the Amazon is dense and dangerous, and to this day, the fate of Fawcett and the existence of this lost city is still a mystery. We're starting off the list with this video captured in 2017 in British Columbia, Canada. This is a video, but it's the sound that really matters here. So it was early in the morning, 8:30 a.m. on December 16th in Whitsett, British Columbia. And this dude started filming the tree line when he heard an absolutely nightmarish sound echoing through the trees, far off in the distance. Take a listen to this. How frightening is that? Now sure, there are a lot of animals in British Columbia. One commenter said this sounds like it could be a mountain lion call. Not sure about that myself. I've never spent time in British Columbia, to be fair, but I've watched videos of mountain lion vocalizations and this doesn't sound like that to me. But what do you guys think? To me this sounds like a banshee. Could also be an elk. Elk makes some pretty creepy noises. Take a listen to that. Like, that's pretty cool, right? Sounds like one of the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. Anyway, whether the creature in this video is Bigfoot, a ghost, or just a known animal, it's a freaky sound any way you slice it, and I would not want to hear that walking through the woods alone. Alright, this next story is pretty nuts. It was posted to Reddit by Donna Hotter Than a Sauna, and she talks about a run-in she and her boyfriend had with a gator. Actually, two gators. Anyway, goes like this. My boyfriend and I were walking through the woods on a nature trail when we came across a piece of alligator tail and foot that had been ripped and the rest of the body was gone. I freaked out. All I kept thinking was, I have no idea what's big enough to kill and eat an entire alligator, but I don't want to meet it. We cautiously kept walking, and a few hundred feet later, saw a giant, probably 10 foot at least, alligator walking along the shoreline with a whole smaller dead alligator in its mouth. You know what's extra terrifying about that story? So they came across a huge alligator, right, that was hungry enough to eat one of its own kind. If they'd been on that walk just a little earlier, may have found them instead. Freaky stuff. Next up, we have the incredibly odd case of the Oakville Blobs. So the Oakville Blobs case was a very bizarre incident that happened in Oakville, Washington in 1994, and I cannot believe I've never heard of this case until today. Like, where have I been? What have I been doing with my life? So this is basically the real life version of the blob. These gelatinous like globs started falling from the sky, and the even scarier part is that they weren't just harmless goo. The blobs actually started making people sick. They experienced symptoms like nausea, dizziness, and respiratory issues. And when scientists looked at the blobs under a microscope, they found something even more strange. There were human white blood cells in them, cells from our immune system. were in these gooey raindrops. Like, what? What is this? How have I not heard of this before? And if you're hoping for some kind of closure to this story, that's too bad, because they've never been definitively identified. Alright, I got some cool Bigfoot footage for you next. This list is gonna be a bit all over the place, but you know, hey, the world's forests are just full of surprises. So this piece of footage was taken by Todd Standing, who's captured some pretty intriguing Bigfoot footage over the years, but this may be his most convincing. Here he saw an ape-like creature peeking out from a tree root, and he was able to focus in and get some pretty clear footage of its face. Take a look. Just look at the skin, the blinking eyes, like the subtle movements. It looks like a real face to me. Now, could it be a guy painted up with some fake fur attached to his head? Maybe. I mean, this could totally very well be a well-executed hoax, but there's also a chance it could be a real animal, too.
In our number 5 spot today, we have rats. This story comes from Florida, and man, this one really just grosses me out. This person was winding down from a beautiful day in the wilderness and they were ready for bed, but as soon as it got dark, suddenly their tent was absolutely covered in hundreds of rats. They explained that these rats were absolutely everywhere. They were climbing up the ropes, they were even on top of the tent. This camper got out of the tent and started a fire. They stayed up all night because, of course, how could you possibly sleep after that? The rats left and the person felt like they had all gone and hopefully moved to another spot, so they decided to risk it and stay another night, which I personally think is insane. Of course, once it got dark, again, the rats returned, and it seemed like there were even more this time. The camper did the same thing as the night before, got the fire started, which thankfully made all of the rats leave. When morning hit, they packed up their camping equipment because it was most definitely time to head to any other spot. Just no rats, please. In our number 4 spot today, we have pebbles. This story comes from someone whose Reddit name is I Hate NY, which I gotta disagree with, and they say, quote, I was backpacking in the Beartooth Wilderness in the early 2000s with a good friend of mine. 3 days into the hike, we had only seen one other couple. On the third night at about 4 a.m., we were awoken in our tent to what sounded like screams in the forest. Big guttural screams. Obviously, we were freaked out sitting in the tent not knowing what was out there. We started hearing what sounded like hail for about 15 minutes, followed by heavy footsteps near our camp. My friend and I started yelling and making tons of noise, and the commotion outside of the tent slowly came to a halt. In the morning, after not sleeping at all, we unzipped the tent to the creepiest scene. All around the tent were literally thousands of little pebbles that were not there the evening before. Surrounding the tent in a near perfect circle were 20 or so 150 to 300 pound boulders. My friend and I noped out of there, making a 3-day hike into one, practically running the entire way to the car. I'm not gonna lie, it's stories like these that are the exact reason I don't camp. Far out in the wilderness with the unexplainable happening around you? Yeah. No thanks. In our number 3 spot today, we have a bad feeling. So basically, this story starts off when a husband and wife were on a camping trip together. Everything was fine and dandy until they started to get this terrible feeling that they weren't alone. The wife was feeling really uneasy, so the pair searched the camp and surrounding area to see if they could find or see anything, but they both turned up empty-handed. The two of them, for the rest of their trip, just couldn't shake the feeling that something was off or wrong, and every so often they swore that they could hear footsteps and branches breaking just behind them. Basically, they were convinced they just couldn't find any evidence other than their gut feeling. When the sun went down, things only got worse. They could fully hear something large moving around their campsite, they could hear footsteps, they could hear low growls, you know, just the general things you don't want to hear outside your tent in the middle of the night. In the morning, the pair found 2 sets of huge feline-like footprints all around their campsite. Once they got back home, they made a quick call to the park ranger, who was able to confirm their worst fears. They were in fact being stalked by a fully grown mountain lion during their trip. Turns out that all of those eerie feelings and their instincts were 100% correct and very valid. In our number 2 spot today, we have forks. This story comes from the Reddit user It's a Bad Time Bob, and they start out by explaining that this story starts off at a time they were backpacking in New Hampshire. After a day hike, Bob decided to set up camp for the night. While searching for the perfect spot, Bob ended up stumbling across something that maybe isn't the most sinister thing, but it certainly is strange enough that it would make anyone feel a little uneasy. Basically, they found a circle that was etched into the ground, and around this circle were a bunch of tuning forks standing straight up. Bob got the feeling like they accidentally stumbled upon some creepy spooky ritual. Needless to say, Bob got the heck out of there and headed back over to the group he was with. Whatever was going on here remains as sort of a mystery. In our number 1 spot today, we have My Name. Okay, there's a reason this is in the number 1 spot. It absolutely creeped me right out. This story is from someone who goes by the username Bodicius, and they wrote, quote, "This past winter I hiked one of the high peaks in the 80Ks with a buddy of mine and camped out overnight. Everything was fine the entire first day we were there, had a great night's sleep and woke up a bit early to hike back to the parking area. On the way back down the trail, my friend and I noticed that someone else had been hiking as well. About a mile after walking, I stopped and saw that my full name, first and last, was drawn into the snow on the side of the footpath. I didn't do it, neither did my friend, and it was snowing a bit throughout the night, and if it was drawn the day before, the snow would have covered it up. We got a bit freaked out and decided to hustle back to our car so we could get the F out of there. We finally get back to the parking area and I go to sign myself out of the registry book. When I turn the page to where I signed in, I see that someone had scribbled out all of my information to where you couldn't read it anymore. No one else had signed into the book besides myself for 3 days. I will not be going back there. I can't say that I blame them at all. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have The Sheep. This camping story starts off with a camper taking a trip to the Mourne Mountains, which are located in Northern Ireland. For the record, I hadn't heard of this mountain range before, and of course I looked it up afterwards, and it looks so incredibly beautiful. Anyways, this person was having a great time enjoying themselves on this trip, but that all changed one morning when they first woke up and walked out of their tent. It was then that they made the gruesome discovery of a sheep that had been totally ripped apart, and it was scattered across like a 20-foot area just in front of their tent. Now, this would be a grisly sight in any scenario, but this tidbit of information certainly makes it even more strange. Apparently in this area, there aren't any wild predators that would be bigger than a fox. A fox definitely could not rip a sheep to shreds, so what on earth could have done this? In the end, whatever it was, that would be quite a jarring discovery. In our number 9 spot today, we have The Small Cave. This story starts off with the person's annual trip to see their dad. Every summer, the pair would take a trip to go camping in the mountains, but one year, they had an experience they'll never forget. They were hiking down a slope when they saw a really old rifle sticking out from a tree. This is obviously unusual, so they got closer to check it out, and they realized that it had obviously been there for quite some time, as the tree had now grown around this rifle. As they got even closer, they noticed a small cave, which they decided to go into. This is when they found a few personal items, like cans of unopened food, a rusted pot, an old wool blanket, you know, things that made it seem like at some point someone was living inside of this cave. The dad went over to the blanket and unrolled it, and this is when it revealed a shirt with holes and blood stains that was all crumpled up inside of this blanket. Did these two accidentally stumble upon some old crime scene? Or perhaps evidence for some other crime scene that happened somewhere else? In the end, the answers remain a mystery. In our number 8 spot today, we have The Surprise. So this story starts off with a group of friends going camping. Honestly, what could be better? You're out in the wilderness with all of your best Judies, things are great, you're making s'mores, life's good. So, of course, one night they go to sleep, and in the morning they have the startling discovery that a bunch of trees right next to their campsite are somehow just all completely knocked over. Like everything is just chaos just behind their campsite. They of course ended up looking up the weather in the area first, and it turns out that that was the right place to look. The group ended up realizing that there was a freak tornado that had popped up while they were sleeping, and it completely tore through everything less than 100 feet from where they were all snuggled up inside of their tent. They were super lucky in this scenario and likely always checked the forecast prior to camping from then on out. In our number 7 spot today, we have The Man in Yellow. This is a story that comes from the Reddit user Stealth Ghost, and they wrote, quote, "We are doing a group trip in the woods literally 40 minutes away from any town. We asked our group leader if we could go back to our cabin as night rolls around. He says sure, and we begin to walk. We have to walk through a path that's 10 minutes long and in the middle of a thick forest. When we're about halfway to our cabin, I got an uneasy feeling. I turned around and literally 10 feet behind us was this random guy in a yellow poncho following us. I told my friends, we all turned around, and none of us recognized him. The guy in the poncho just smiled at us for a second and then ran off the path into the woods. So my friends and I sprinted to the cabin where the rest of the group already was there. They of course went on to tell the leaders about what happened, and despite their best efforts, they were unable to find anything after. I guess if you ever see someone in a yellow poncho while camping, maybe just double check to be sure they're following you. In our number 6 spot today, we have the cooler. This story comes from the Reddit user ADK09, and they start off by talking about how, once while on a camping trip of course, they found a cooler. This cooler was just completely abandoned in a gully, which could be nothing and just regular litter, but also could be something absolutely horrifying, you know what I mean? ADK09 was on this trip with buddies, and they were too busy enjoying their time, so they didn't end up inspecting the cooler and just carried on with their trip. It was also dark when they found it, and probably just thought it might be better not to mess with it in the middle of the night. This is of course not where the story ends, however. It picks up a week later when it turns out that the authorities ended up finding this exact same cooler. Of course, the authorities opened it up, and inside they found a body. And that's the end of that.
This next story comes from Reddit user Peaches and Mangoes. It goes as follows. Back in 2021, my husband and I were camping in Wyoming at the Boysen Reservoir. We got really lucky and were able to book a beachfront site directly leading to the water. The downside was that it was very, very far away from the other campsites. We were essentially isolated from everyone else. At the time though, it sounded like a dream come true. The thing about Wyoming is that it's so desolate to the point where it's pitch black and eerily dead silent once the sun is gone. We set up our camp, enjoyed our fire, but shortly after that, a random SUV with blacked out windows came driving down our road and into our site. They drove toward us. My husband tried to wave to them in case they were lost and needed help, but instead they ignored us and drove down to the beach, stayed there for 5 minutes, turned around and went back up the way they came. We immediately got a bad vibe. My husband told me to throw everything in the car, and he kept shining a flashlight toward the beach because we had a feeling they dropped someone off to watch us. After we packed up, we got in the car and hauled out of there. Lo and behold, the same car drove back into our campsite, and when they saw us leaving, they actually started chasing us. Mind you, the roads in Wyoming are bumpy and unkempt when you're in the wilderness, on top of that enormous wildlife that wanders in and out of the streets. We were easily going 80 miles per hour down these windy roads and even through a canyon. They were on our tail for about 10 minutes until we lost them after passing through the canyon. Late one night in rural Pennsylvania, Bigfoot hunter John Reed was out camping in his Winnebago, what he calls the doghouse. At one point in the night though, rocks started smashing against the vehicle, windows cracked, tail lights were damaged, and it was clear someone, or something, was intentionally throwing them. Reed flicked on his headlights, and that's when he saw it, a huge, hunched, brown-furred creature. The whole thing happened so fast, Reed could barely take in what he was looking at before it disappeared back into the night. If you're a fan of one of the greatest metal bands in recent memory, Children of Bodom, then you may have heard of this next case. In the early hours of June 5th, 1960, 4 teenagers were camping at Lake Bodom in Finland when an unknown attacker struck. By morning, 3 of them were dead, and 1 was barely conscious, lying nearby with a broken jaw and fractured cheekbones. The tent had collapsed inward and was soaked with red stains. One of the campers had been dragged partially out, and the other 2 were found inside, all killed with a mix of stabbing and blunt force trauma. Personal items like clothing, wallets, shoes were missing or scattered in the surrounding brush, some half a kilometer away. Weapons were never recovered though. Eyewitnesses reported a blonde man walking away around 6 a.m., but no one was ever caught. The case went cold for decades until 2004, when the one survivor, named Nils Gustafsson himself, was arrested. Prosecutors claimed that he'd killed the others and tried to fake his own injuries. He was acquitted in 2005 though, because his injuries made it impossible that that was the case. Evidence was weak, and the crime scene had been badly contaminated. There were other suspects though, including a local kiosk owner who allegedly confessed while intoxicated, and a former German soldier seen with bloodied clothes. Neither was charged though, and over 60 years later, the Lake Bodom case is still one of Finland's most infamous unsolved crimes. In September of 1974, the Cowden family went camping in Oregon's Siskiyou Mountains for Labor Day weekend. Richard Cowden, his wife Belinda, their son David and daughter Melissa, along with their basset hound Droopy, arrived at a campground near Carberry Creek. On the morning of September 1st, Richard and David were seen heading back from the local general store. that was the last anyone saw the family alive. That evening, Belinda's mother expected them for dinner, but found the campsite deserted. The family's truck was still parked nearby, and all their belongings were left behind. Milk from the store, a diaper bag, the camp stove, Belinda's purse, Richard's wallet and watch. Over the next 7 months, authorities carried out one of the largest searches in Oregon's history, but nothing turned up. Then in April of 1975, 2 gold prospectors hiking nearby found bodies. Richard had been tied to a tree on a hillside, while Belinda, David, and baby Melissa were hidden in a small cave. Police suspected local killer Dwayne Lee Little may have been involved, but he was never charged. He went to prison for other crimes, so officially, this case is still unsolved. In August of 1985, Stephen Harkins and his girlfriend Ruth Cooper went on a weekend camping trip in Pierce County, Washington. When they didn't show up for work, the following Monday, their families reported them missing. 4 days later, hikers found Harkins' body near a remote campsite. He'd been shot in the head while still in his sleeping bag. Nearby, the couple's dog was also found dead. 2 months later, Cooper's skull was discovered about a mile away, and her body was found just 50 feet from it. A tube sock had been tied around her neck. Then in December of 1985, another camping trip in the same area went tragically wrong. Mike Reimer, his girlfriend Diana Robertson, and their daughter Crystal went looking for a Christmas tree. Crystal was later found alone outside a Kmart, saying her mommy was, quote, in the trees. Diana's body was discovered months later with a tube sock tied around her neck. Reimer had vanished. Years later, in 2011, hikers found a partial human skull that was confirmed to be Reimer's. But to this day, we still don't know who is responsible for what's been dubbed the tube sock killings. And this final case is super recent. Just under a week ago, campers at Loch Lomond came across human remains near one of the loch's most popular picnic and camping spots. It was around 12:40 in the afternoon when someone spotted the remains on the bank, and police quickly cordoned off the area. Forensic officers in white suits, sniffer dogs, and divers, they spent hours combing the shoreline and the nearby trails. The remains didn't seem to have been in the water long, but how they ended up there is still a mystery, and this is being treated as a potentially suspicious death. In the summer of 1982, the Johnson and Bentley families headed out for a camping trip in British Columbia's Wells Gray area. 6 people in total: Bob and Jackie Johnson, their daughters Janet and Karen, and Jackie's parents George and Edith. They called relatives once on August 6th, and then nothing. When Bob didn't show up for work a week later, people knew something was seriously wrong. A month went by before anyone found a clue, but then a mushroom picker stumbled on the family's burnt-out car deep in the woods. Inside were the bodies of the 4 adults. In the trunk were the 2 girls. The case was huge in Canada at the time. For a whole year, nobody knew who was responsible for this. Police even hauled a replica of the family's camper truck across provinces to see if anyone recognized it, but it wasn't until October of 1983 when the missing camper was finally discovered. Just like the car that had been found over a year earlier, this one was burned, abandoned on a logging road not far from the original site. This was the key that tied everything back to a local guy named David Shearing, who eventually confessed to stalking the family at their campsite, killing the adults, and then turning on the kids. In 1984, he pled guilty and was given life with no parole for 25 years. In September of 1992, 2 young backpackers from Britain, Carolyn Clark and Joanne Walters, set out to explore Australia's Blue Mountains. Weeks later, their bodies were discovered in the Blickling State Forest. Walters had been brutally attacked with a blade, while Clark had been taken down with gunfire. Detectives believe the person responsible had toyed with them, dragging things out instead of ending it quickly. At the time, nobody realized this was just the beginning. Over the next year, the remains of 5 more young travelers turned up in different parts of the same forest. A German student and couple, plus an Australian pair. They were left in shallow graves, some covered with sticks and leaves. It was becoming clear there was a serial killer on the loose. But who was it? Well, it turned out there was one surviving witness, a British backpacker named Paul Onions. 2 years before bodies started turning up, Paul had been hitchhiking in Australia and was picked up by a man named Ivan Millet. Well, Mr. Onions immediately noticed a rope and a firearm in the car, 2 things you'd never want to see right beside each other when climbing into a stranger's vehicle, which you should never be doing in the first place. Onions took off running, with Millet in pursuit along the highway. Onions barely escaped, flagging down another driver who took him to the nearest police station. At the time, police barely acted though. They just handed him some cash and sent him back to the UK. It wasn't until years later, when news about all these bodies being turned up, that Onions contacted Australian authorities and was like, hey, you remember my case? I nearly died in that area. You might want to look into this guy. So Paul Onions was then flown back to Australia in 1996 to help finally tie Ivan Millet to the killings. In August of 1967, Glacier National Park in Montana became the scene of a horrifying night that would later be called the Night of the Grizzlies. Two young women, both 19, were camping in different areas of the park when they were attacked by grizzly bears. The first attack happened around midnight. Julie Helgeson and her boyfriend were camping nearby when she spotted a bear approaching. The bear went after both of them, but ended up dragging her into the woods. Just a few hours later, at Trout Lake, another bear attacked Michelle Coons, who was camping with friends. Coons woke up as the bear investigated her sleeping bag. She screamed, and while her friends climbed trees to safety, the bear dragged her away about 300 feet. They waited in the trees until dawn before running to report the attack. After the attacks, park rangers were ordered to shoot any bears found near the sites. 4 bears were killed over the next 2 days. Postmortems confirmed that 2 of those bears had been responsible for the deaths. Back in the winter of 1924, 3 fur trappers were working in the Deschutes National Forest in Oregon. Edward Nichols, Roy Wilson, and Dewey Morris had moved into a remote cabin to trap animals through the snowy months. They were last seen in mid-January, when a friend left after visiting the cabin. After that, no one heard from them. By April, people started getting suspicious. Their traps were found unattended, and the cabin looked abandoned with burnt food in the pots. The table had also been set for a meal, but no signs of people, aside from the pools of BLOOD in the snow and clumps of hair near the lake. But finally, when the ice over Little Lava Lake thawed enough to search by boat, the bodies of all 3 men floated to the surface. Autopsies showed they'd been killed with both firearms and blunt objects. At least 2 of the men had been lured away from the cabin. Police quickly identified a suspect, Charles Kimsey, who'd had a history of robbery and attempted unaliving, and he was tracked selling furs from the victims. Kimsey was eventually imprisoned for a separate crime, and while he was the prime suspect, no one was ever convicted for the trappers' deaths. It's one of Oregon's oldest unsolved cases. After the 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster, Japan set up a 20-kilometer exclusion zone around the Fukushima Daiichi plant. Some areas have reopened, but a portion are still off limits. They're known as the difficult to return zones. These are forests where radiation levels are still dangerously high. Just like the Red Forest in Ukraine, you can't get in without special permission. Don't know why you'd want to anyway, though. These forests cover about 70% of Fukushima Prefecture. Decontaminating them is pretty much impossible because of the way radiation particles cling to trees and soil, so the government decided not to bother with these areas, focusing on places people actually live in and work around. Even in zones where people have returned, foraging is still restricted. Wild plants and mushrooms often contain radiation levels that are well above safety limits. The radiation just seeps into the ground. Nung Mai Ching is a forest in northeast India that's technically off limits. If you're an outsider, that is. It's a protected area, and under Indian law, you're not supposed to build on it, live there, or do much of anything without permission. That hasn't stopped people from trying, though. Over the years, parts of the forest have been cleared out for farming. People have also tried to build homes here. Some of those clearings were done by setting fires on purpose. In 2023, police caught 4 guys hunting in the forest with firearms and flashlights. The forest department and police have had to do full-blown eviction drives, removing illegal setups and chasing people off the land. It's got intense a few times, so the government put a stop to casual visits. No camping, no picnics. Even if you're just looking to explore, you're not allowed in without official clearance. It's also a sacred place for some of the local communities, so there's pressure to keep people out for both environmental and cultural reasons. Sapo National Park is the biggest protected rainforest in Liberia, and while it's technically possible to visit, you need special permission, and even then, the government has restricted access a number of times over the years. The place is pretty dangerous if you're inexperienced. It's deep, it's isolated, and there are no marked trails. You're basically on your own here if you try to get in without clearance. People have tried though. In the early 2000s, there was this wave of illegal settlers who tried to move into the forest, and it took government troops and UN peacekeepers to get them out. There's also been poaching and illegal gold mining here. In 2023, over 3,000 illegal miners were removed from 24 camps in the park. But because of how wild and on track the forest is, just getting in is hard enough. Some sections have been sealed off completely, and wildlife authorities have even set up patrols to watch for people trying to sneak in. Technically, this forest is open to the public, but a lot of areas are closed off, and authorities strongly discourage going outside the designated trails. This is a very dense, quiet patch of woods sitting at the base of Mount Fuji in Japan. Locals call it the Sea of Trees because it's so thick it's easy to get lost in just a few minutes. The ground is all hardened lava from an old eruption, and it absorbs sound, so when you're in there, it's dead silent. That silence is one of the things that makes this place feel so unsettling, and its dark reputation doesn't help either. For decades, people have been going into this forest never to come out again. For whatever reason, people take their own lives here. Signs are posted all over the place telling visitors to turn back or talk to someone if they're feeling overwhelmed. Authorities do regular sweeps, and there are even volunteer groups who go in and look for abandoned tents and missing people. That's how often this happens here. The forest is said to have this strange pull to it, beautiful on the outside, but with this unsettlingly heavy energy. Hoya Baciu Forest is said to be one of the strangest places in Romania. There have been stories about it for hundreds of years, people vanishing, hearing voices when no one's around, even getting rashes and nausea after spending time inside. One of the most famous spots is a circular clearing deep in the woods where no trees grow at all. The scientists have tested the soil and can't seem to find a clear reason why nothing survives there. The trees around the circle are all twisted in weird shapes too. And paranormal researchers who spent the night have said their equipment will act up, batteries will die instantly, footage will come back distorted. The place is technically open to visitors, but parts have been closed off over the years, especially after fires or when people have gone missing. They've also restricted drone use, which is rare for a forest like this. If you ask anyone who's been, probably tell you once you're inside, the forest feels like it closes in on you, almost as if it doesn't want you to leave. There have been stories about Witchwood Forest in England being haunted since at least the 1600s. The most well-known story is about the ghost of Amy Robsart, the wife of Lord Robert Dudley, who was found dead at the bottom of a staircase in 1560. Her death was ruled an accident, but many believe she was pushed, possibly so Dudley could marry Queen Elizabeth I. People claim she appears suddenly in the forest, and if she speaks to you, you'll die shortly after. Others have seen a horse-drawn carriage racing through the trees or shadowy figures standing just off the trails. There have also been reports of people hearing their names whispered, sometimes by voices they recognize, except said person isn't actually with them. The forest is a conservation area today, but there are large portions of it that are protected and off limits. Rangers have also reported people needing to be rescued or escorted out in a panic after getting lost, and some locals, especially the older ones, won't go near the place after dark. The Pine Barrens cover over 1 million acres in southern New Jersey. The deeper you go, the stranger it gets. Most people know the Pine Barrens because of the Jersey Devil, a winged, horned cryptid said to stalk the woods, but the real dangers are much more grounded. Massive wildfires break out here all the time, and a lot of them spread fast because the forest floor is packed with dry pine needles and sandy soil. We've also got abandoned towns hiding here, old iron and sawmill villages that were left behind in the 1800s. Sections of Brendan T. Burns State Forest, Wharton State Forest, and others have been sealed off temporarily because of illegal dumping and unexploded ordnance from old military training exercises. And people get lost here too. Rescue teams have found them disoriented, dehydrated, and in some cases telling stories about being followed, but not by animals, something else, something they couldn't quite explain. One guy said he kept hearing footsteps behind him, but every time he turned around, nothing was there. Just trees. About 90 miles off the coast of Sao Paulo, Brazil, there's an island so dangerous it's completely off limits. It's crawling with golden lancehead vipers, a species that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Some estimates say there could be one snake per square meter. Their venom is so strong it can melt your flesh. You step wrong here and you don't get a second chance. These snakes are terrifying too. They're known to snatch up birds when they perch on the trees. The island used to have a lighthouse and a family living on it in the early 1900s, but story goes they didn't make it very long. After that, the place was fully abandoned. Now only a few government researchers and military personnel are allowed to go, and they have to follow very strict protocols, including bringing medical staff with them, of course. Biologists still study the snakes because their venom might be useful for new medicines, but aside from that, the island is completely. In India's Karnataka state, there's a forest near a place called Kannapur that's now blocked off every year during monsoon season. Entry is strictly forbidden, and that's because when it rains, the entire area turns into this dangerous mess. The trails get covered in slippery moss, rivers and waterfalls overflow, and the visibility gets so bad you could easily just fall and get swept away. On top of that, you have all the living dangers to worry about. Leopards, bears, and tigers, oh my. And things get more dangerous during the season because the animals get pushed into smaller areas thanks to flooding. What really pushed things over the edge was a group of guys who ignored the ban, hiked into the restricted zone, and posted videos of themselves online. Thankfully, they didn't die, but they were arrested. Since then, they've added more security here. They got checkposts now, forest staff patrolling the area, and they're turning people away every day. You don't get a slap on the wrist if you're caught. It is a criminal charge. The Red Forest is a no-go zone inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone in Ukraine. When the Chernobyl disaster happened in 1986, this patch of forest got hit with this blast of radiation so strong it killed the trees almost instantly. And the pine needles turned red. That's of course where the name comes from. And the ground is still full of radioactive dust decades later. Unlike a lot of the forests on this list, the danger here is pretty much unavoidable. It's dangerous to your health just standing in it for too long. Imagine getting lost here. The Ukrainian government made it illegal to enter without special permission, and even then, you're not allowed to stay for very long. You need protective gear as well. There are patrols, checkpoints, and fences to keep people out. Tourists can visit parts of the exclusion zone on guided trips, but the Red Forest is off limits. It's so radioactive that even cleanup crews avoid it unless they absolutely have to go in. Animals have come back to the area, but that doesn't mean it's safe. There's not really a way to explain the dangers of radiation poisoning to wild boars and wolves.
Next up, we have Elen Forest, located in Escondido, California, home to a refurbished former insane asylum, Native American spirits, and Romani curses. It is said that the Quest Haven Resort, located within the forest at one time, was actually an insane asylum that was not kind to those living within its walls. As we have discussed many times on this channel, asylums back in the day were basically prisons, and not nice ones either. Rumors of shock therapy, forced isolation, forcible restrainment, starvation, waterboarding, and lobotomy taking place within the asylum are far from being in short supply. Many people who stay at the alleged former asylum, which is now a forest retreat, claim to have seen the ghosts of deceased patients roaming the halls of the renovated building. And then of course there are the spirits of the Native Americans who once roamed the land, and the curse of the Romani people who were killed by said Native Americans. And if that's not enough for you, there's more. It's also believed that a very powerful witch once lived and died in the forest. A witch whose spirit many people have claimed to see riding on a black stallion and marking unwanted visitors to the forest with a mark that will allow her to seek them out and kill them should they ever return. So if you are gonna go here, might I recommend doing it just once.
Now we move on to India with Dowo Hill Forest. This forest and the surrounding area really is said to be incredibly haunted. For one, you have Dowo Hill's Victoria Boys School, where people will see lights turning on and off, along with the sounds of footsteps, even when the place is closed during the winter vacation. The area is also famous for the foreboding sounding Death Road, where local woodcutters have reported seeing the headless apparition of a boy who disappears into the forest. People will also claim to see red eyes peering out of the trees at night and the sounds of footsteps trailing behind them, only to turn around and find the path behind them completely empty.
Next up, we have the forest surrounding the grand estate at Blickling Hall, also known as the Great Wood, located in England, the birthplace, death place, and haunting grounds of Anne Boleyn. On May 19th of 1536, Anne Boleyn was executed after being charged with adultery, treason, and incest. Rather than being burned at the stake, a popular method of execution for women at the time, she was beheaded, as was instructed by her husband, King Henry VIII. On the day of her execution, she gave a speech in which she maintained her innocence, and then, right before the sword came down on her neck, she yelled, "Jesus, receive my soul. O Lord, God have pity on my soul." While some might believe that her final wish was answered and the late former Queen of England's soul now rests cozily in the clouds, most people agree that that's not the case. Probably because they are pretty sure she never actually left the estate and the forest surrounding it. Probably because every year on the anniversary of her death, her headless spirit can be seen riding in from the woods up to the hall on a coach drawn by 4 headless horsemen.
Epping Forest is another spooky English spot. A lot of weird stuff goes on here. For example, if you leave your car parked in neutral on Hangman's Hill, it'll apparently roll uphill. You also have some history here. There's a cave that's said to have been a hiding spot for the notorious Dick Turpin, aka the Highwayman. It's also said that Epping Forest was where he committed one of his killings. Then, of course, there's all the ghost stories. Well, you have Turpin himself, but there are also said to be poltergeists lurking in the forest. One of the last types of spirits you want to come across, because, you know, they like to throw things around, and they're just generally kind of aggro. People have reported being pushed and hit by unseen forces in the forest. You also have the ghost of a headless horseman here as well, a ghost who likes dashing in front of cars before vanishing into thin air, and a semi-translucent horse-drawn coach.
Next on our list, we have Cannock Chase Fort, located in Stratfordshire in the UK, which you can probably guess based on the fact that it's in Stratfordshire. And it's also home to the Black-Eyed Woman. Not only that, but it was the death place of 3 other young women who were brutally killed in the forest between the years of 1965 and 1976. So already off to a bad start. But of course it gets worse because there's the matter of the black-eyed young woman who is said to haunt the forest, where you can often hear the cries of the deceased and the sounds of footsteps following close behind you at all times. One visitor to the forest who had not only heard the screams of the forest, but also had a particularly memorable run-in with the ghost/demon lady, recounted the experience, saying, "I turned around and saw a woman stood behind me, very young, with her hands over her eyes. I asked if she was okay and if she had been the one screaming. She put her arms down by her side and opened her eyes. That's when I saw it. They were completely black. No iris, no white, nothing. And when I looked again, she was gone." Pretty creepy.
Next up, we have a forest so notorious for its dark paranormal activity that it's been the setting for some classic Grimm's fairy tales like Hansel and Gretel, the Black Forest in Germany. This forest is said to be haunted by witches, werewolves, and ghosts, although the fairy tales may have come first and actually spawned a lot of these legends, I imagine. It's said that the forest is ruled by a king who likes kidnapping women, wandering around alone, and then taking them down to his underwater kingdom where he rules over his legion of nymphs. The Black Forest also has a tale that may have been part of the inspiration for Slender Man. Der Grossman, or the Tall Man, is a dark spirit that is said to lurk in the depths of the forest, a deformed humanoid man with long, multiple arms and legs who stalks youngsters.
And finally, we have the Durning Woods Forest, located just outside of Pluckley Village in Kent, England. Not only is this forest haunted, it's Guinness Book of Records haunted. According to locals, continuous screams can be heard coming from the forest during both the night and the day, which is probably why it's known around town as the Screaming Woods. pretty straightforward. It is believed that among other entities, the forest is inhabited by the spirit of a colonel who took his own life in the forest back in the 1600s. He has been seen walking around the trees and reaching out to those who visit the area. Other accounts of the area tell of a highwayman, an armed robber who jumps out at hikers there to enjoy nature. Basically, if it's not one thing, it's another, and to be honest, none of it really sounds like that good of a time, but as is with all the forests on this list, I don't recommend you go, but visiting is ultimately up to you.
The Hoya Baciu Forest in Romania has quite the reputation. It's known for a lot of things: ghosts, mysterious disappearances, UFOs, and a section of the woods where nothing grows. It's all pretty ominous. So it's no surprise it's known as one of the most haunted forests in the world, as well as the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. In 1968, a military technician named Emil Barnia had been walking through the forest when he came to an area known as the Clearing, or the Circle. More on the circle in a moment. Now, he noticed something hovering in the sky and snapped this photograph. Genuine UFO? Hoax? Share your thoughts in the comments. This section of forest called the Circle is a bit of a mystery though. Nothing seems to grow there, and on top of that, odd flashes and strobes of light have been reported there for decades. Hoya Baciu is also known for its strange disappearances, most famously the shepherd that the forest is named after, who went missing along with his flock of 200 sheep, and a girl who suddenly vanished and then reappeared years later, having no memory of what had happened to her.
Next on our list today, we have the Freetown Fall River State Forest, located in southeastern Massachusetts and home to claims of UFO sightings and abductions, ghosts, Native American curses, killings, ritual sacrifices, toxic waste dumpings, and mutated animals. You name it, someone's seen it in the Freetown Fall River Forest. I guarantee it. While I don't have the time, nor the resources to prove every single claim made about the creepy plot of land densely packed by lush green trees, I was able to find a report confirming the killing of a young woman in the forest back in 1987 and 3 other individuals in the months that followed, and reports supporting the existence of satanic cult activities taking place there as well. In November of 1978, Mary Lou Arruda was found dead, tied to a tree in the state forest after she had been forcibly taken there by her assailant. In 1980, it was brought to the attention of the authorities that the forest was being used for satanic cult activities, which likely had something to do with the death of Mary Lou. In 1987, a homeless man mistaken for a police officer was killed in the forest, and in 2001, 2 men were found dead after being hit with projectiles fired from a handheld weapon. You guys know what I mean. Reports of hazardous waste dumping, aggressive animals, and even an escaped emu roaming throughout the trees also exist.
In Oxfordshire, England, there's a forest called Witchwood, which is said to be full of ghostly entities. Probably the most famous campfire Witchwood story is the tale of the ghost of Amy. Amy Robsart was the wife of the Earl of Leicester. In 1560, she died after having broken her neck. As for how she broke it, there's some debate about that. Well, years went by and her husband was on a hunting trip in Witchwood Forest, and he saw something he was never expecting to see. It was the reanimated corpse of his wife peering out at him from the trees. The Earl was in utter shock, completely unable to move as this ghoulish corpse of his wife slowly approached him, and she spoke, telling him that in 10 days he would be joining her in the afterlife. Well, not long after the encounter, he fell ill, dying 10 days later. It's said that Amy still haunts the forest, and if you run into her, it means your own death might be near. There are other spirits said to roam Witchwood as well, though. Some will hear the sounds of disembodied cries or feel a tap on their shoulder, only to find out that there's nobody there.
Next up, we have yet another body discovered in the woods near Vietnam Veterans Memorial Bridge in Lewiston in Maine. On Friday afternoon, on the 3rd of May of this year, a body was found inside a tent in the wooded area beneath the bridge. Authorities were called and police arrived at the scene shortly after, around 4:30. Of course, as is with everything on the list, this is incredibly recent. I mean, you did click on a video about disturbing things found in 2024, just 5 months into 2024. So there's not much information. What has been released to the public though is that the body was removed from the area and brought to a medical examiner. The person's identity as well as the cause of death remains unknown.
One of the creepiest things about the woods to me are all the noises. Through the dense vegetation and the sheer size of some forests, you never really know what could be lurking out there. So when you hear something like this, yeah, it makes you pretty uneasy. That sounded like the werewolf howl from An American Werewolf in London. If you've seen the movie, you know the one. Not what I want to hear while trekking alone through the forest. The video was taken in a forest somewhere in eastern Canada a few months back. Now, it being the Canadian wilderness, there are tons of things that could have made a sound like that. Doesn't make it sound any less frightening though. It could be a moose call. But have you ever seen a moose up close? They're gigantic. And there's also the possibility that it is a Sasquatch call. Can't write that off either.
Next up, believe it or not, is not a dead body, just an incredibly creepy abandoned home filled with creepy and decrepit knickknacks. Earlier this year, 2 Canadian urban explorers stumbled upon an abandoned home while exploring in Ontario. As the explorers entered the home, they were greeted by a doll sitting on the staircase, and many other vintage dolls and toys were scattered around the house, some in okay condition for an abandoned house, that is, and some not really. Many stuffed animals had been ripped to shreds and strewn across the floor, making for a pretty eerie sight. As the explorers made their way through the home, they were greeted in each and every room by another pair of lifeless, unblinking doll eyes. One of the explorers even said that it was the strangest abandoned house they had ever seen, and that it was also super creepy. If you have a fear of dolls, I wouldn't suggest seeking this place out because I don't know, you might pee your pants.
This next story comes to us from Reddit. It was posted about 6 months back from a now deleted user. I hope they're okay. It goes as follows. Hey everyone, I need to get this off my chest. Something weird happened to me yesterday and I can't shake the feeling that I was being followed. So I decided to take a hike in the ravine near my house. It's usually pretty quiet, but yesterday things felt off right from the start. About halfway into my hike, I started hearing twigs snapping behind me. At first I thought it was just an animal, maybe a raccoon, but when I turned around, there was nothing there. I shrugged it off and kept walking, but I kind of felt like I was being watched. Then I started to hear footsteps. Not the rustling of leaves or the scurrying of small animals, but distinct footsteps, like someone was walking right behind me. I stopped. I looked around, but again, nobody there. At this point, I started to feel really uneasy. I picked up my pace, hoping to shake off whatever was following me, but the footsteps kept getting closer. I could almost feel someone breathing down my neck. I broke into a sprint. I didn't stop until I burst out of the ravine and back onto the street. When I finally caught my breath, I glanced back at the trees, half expecting to see someone standing right there, but there was nothing. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but I can't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in there.
And finally, we have the discovery of a 22-million-year-old forest located in the Panama Canal. And while this discovery is not spooky scary, like unknown beings and unsolved deaths, it's scary in the sense that it reminds us that we really know nothing about the planet that we live on. Earlier this year, scientists discovered a 22-million-year-old forest that had previously disappeared after a volcanic eruption. They discovered remnants of the forest on Barrow, Colorado Island after noticing fossilized trees on the island that they believe were likely all buried and fossilized by volcanic lava flow in the same massive event. The fossilized trees represent a species of mangrove previously unknown, and it is believed that they can grow to be upward of 131 feet tall, which is wild considering modern day mangroves generally grow to be only about 20 feet.
So this is a pretty clear video. The creature is obscured by trees, but we do get a nice long look at it, and just like the description says, whatever this thing is, it's picking up big logs and hurling them around like they're nothing. Take a look. yeah, that ain't no bear. The way it like picks it up and just like slams it down like that. If I saw some hairy thing slamming a log down in the middle of the woods, I would be booking it right out of there. There are a few things that make this video convincing. For one, the clear strength the thing seems to exhibit. One commenter wrote, "I had a tree business before, so I know the weight of logs, and that would take extraordinary strength to do that." I also like that this footage was supposedly taken with a trail camera. If this had been taken by some hiker in the woods, I'd be wondering why they stuck around to film when it's pretty obvious you'd be running for your life. Anyway, what do you all think of this one? Hoax? Genuine? Let me know down in the comments.
Next up, we have the shocking discovery of Cole Brings Plenty, an actor best known for his role on Into the Wild Frontier, as well as his work on 1923 and The Tall Tales of Jim Bridger. Plenty was last seen on March 30th of this year, driving his white Ford Explorer out of Lawrence, Kansas. He was reported missing the following day. After receiving a call about an empty vehicle matching the description of Plenty's, police canvassed the woods nearby where it had been left. And on April 5th of this year, 2024, Cole Brings Plenty was found dead. While the cause of death has yet to be shared with the public, police insist that they will continue to investigate the passing and provide more information as time goes on.
Aliens in Brazil. So this is a bit of a weird story. Just back in January, hikers in Brazil captured some strange figures looming over them at the top of a hill. Figures who they believed to be of extraterrestrial origin. And I will say, whatever these things are, they don't look human. I mean, not quite. There's something just kinda off about them. The footage was captured on an island about 285 miles down the coast from Sao Paulo. In the video, we see a beautiful hillside, but perched on top are two tall humanoid figures silhouetted against the sky. And considering how far away they are, they look to be pretty tall. The people who posted the video said they were about 10 feet tall. Now on top of that, their bodies just look weird. They're very slender, and zooming in on one of these things here, yeah, just take a look at how long that arm is. I mean, sure, the image is blurry. Maybe it's just kind of distorted, or maybe, you know, Slender Man was on vacation in Brazil. It does have a bit of a Slender Man kind of look to it. Now, if you're wondering, oh, maybe these were just like, you know, scarecrow type things at the top of the hill, you do actually see them move a little bit in the footage, and they don't move naturally either. I don't know, could totally be a hoax, could also be genuine. Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Next up, we have another body found in the woods, this time just off of Richmond International Raceway, a car racing track located in Henrico County in the state of Virginia. Around 4 p.m. on April 25th, a man visiting the track went to use the washroom when he noticed a strong smell. When he followed it, he discovered the body of an unknown man or woman that, according to reports, was not skeletal but had likely been in the woods for an extended period of time before being discovered. Of course, seeing as this is incredibly recent, there is not much information on the case, other than it seems as though the body was left there intentionally. Police have yet to release the cause of death or any other identifying information on the deceased, probably because they don't know. They did state that they are sifting through missing persons reports in an effort to identify who the victim might be.
Next up, we have a jogger who captured a pretty creepy image and didn't even know about it until later. A runner named Kay Borlees was on an endurance run with the Hawaiian ultra running team during a particularly harsh stretch of the loop full of tree roots and water crossings. She ended up injuring her foot and had to pull out of the race. Her pacer, Cassie, had been capturing images the entire time though, so she had some photos to show her friends and family. As she scrolled through the images, something caught her eye though, something that sent a shiver down her spine. It looked like a ghoulish figure had been peering out at her from the brush. Take a look. Kay posted her story along with the images to Reddit, and they were blowing up recently. And it makes sense, because that is a pretty creepy image. It looks like a zombie is walking through the woods there. Both Cassie and Kay didn't remember seeing anyone else on that part of the trail, saying tourists weren't out that early. We didn't see anyone for hours while running together, so we were, and still are, positive there was no one there.
Number 5. Bat Squatch. The Bat Squatch is a flying cryptid that was allegedly seen near Mount St. Helens in the 1980s. This creature is said to have yellow eyes, a dog-like muzzle, blue fur, sharp teeth, bird-like feet, and a leathery bat-like wings that span up to 50 feet. In addition, Bat Squatch is said to be 9 feet tall and has the ability to affect car engines. In April 1994, Brian Canfield was driving in Washington's Pierce County when his truck suddenly died. He said a large creature landed in front of him that was human-like, 9 feet tall, with bat-like wings and a coat of blue fur. A possible second sighting was reported in 2009 near Mount Shasta in California. Several hikers witnessed a huge creature with leathery wings spanning 50 feet fly out of a crevice in the mountain. At first, an eyewitness described the creature as having a head similar to a pterodactyl. However, upon reconsideration, the witness claimed that it was more akin to a flying fox bat. Then, in June 2011, a man was in his yard walking his dog and said, "I saw something flying in the sky. It had bat wings, blue fur, and had a face similar to eyes growing red. It was about 9 feet tall at the least, and I watched it just fly away." Number 4. Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil is a legendary creature said to inhabit the forest of the Pine Barrens in South Jersey. This creature is often described as a flying biped with hooves, but there are many variations. The common description is that of a bipedal kangaroo or wyvern-like creature with a horse or goat-like head, leathery bat-like wings, horns, small arms with clawed hands, legs with cloven hooves, and a forked or pointed tail. It has been reported to move quickly and is often described as emitting a high-pitched, blood-curdling scream. According to popular folklore, the Jersey Devil originated with a Pine Barrens resident named Jade Leeds, also known as Mother Leeds. The legend states that Mother Leeds had 12 children, and after discovering she was pregnant for the 13th time, she cursed the child in frustration, declaring that the child would be the devil. Born as a normal child, the 13th child transformed into the creature with hooves, a goat's head, bat wings, and a forked tail. Growling and screaming, the child beat everyone with its tail before flying up the chimney and heading into the pines. It was in some versions of the tale that Mother Leeds was supposedly a witch, and the child's father was the devil himself. Then one of the first reported Jersey Devil sightings was in 1812, when Joseph Bonaparte, Napoleon's older brother, claimed he saw the Jersey Devil while hunting near his Bordentown estate. Number 3. Mothman. In West Virginia folklore, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 5th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. The first newspaper report was published on the Point Pleasant Register, dated November 16th, 1966, titled "Couple See Man-Sized Bird, Creature, Something." The national press soon picked up on the reports and helped spread the news story across the United States. On November 15th, 1996, 2 young couples from Point Pleasant, Dickie and Linda Maxwell, and Steve and Mary Mallet, told police that they had seen a large white creature whose eyes glowed red, standing at the side of the road near the TNT area, the site of the former World War II munitions plant. Linda Scarberry described it as a slender, muscular man, about 7 feet tall with white wings, and said that she was unable to discern its face due to the hypnotic effects of its eyes. Distressed, the witnesses drove away at a high speed and said that the creature flew after their car, making a screeching sound. It pursued them as far as Point Pleasant city limits, and during the next few days, other people reported similar sightings after local newspapers reported it. 2 volunteer firemen who saw it said it was a large bird with red eyes. Number 2. Skunk Ape. The skunk ape is a cryptid ape-like creature that inhabits forests and swamps in the southeastern United States. Perhaps most prominent in the state of Florida, the alleged creature is also commonly referred to as the Florida Bigfoot and is often compared to or called the cousin of Bigfoot, a prominent subject within North America popular culture. Now, the skunk ape is commonly described as a bipedal ape-like creature, approximately 5 to 7 feet tall, and covered in malted reddish-brown hair. It is named for its foul odor, often described as being similar to a skunk. The skunk ape has been recorded as appearing in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama folklore since European settlers first occupied the region. In 1818, local newspapers reported a story that spoke of a man-sized monkey raiding food stores and stalking fishermen along the shore. And coming at number 1 is skinwalkers. In Navajo culture, a skinwalker is a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. According to some tradition, skinwalkers were once healers and medicine men who were corrupted by their own power and turned evil. By draping the hide of certain animals over themselves, the witch takes on the form and traits of the animal. Now in doing so, the witch gains the animal's strength, speed, and endurance. They sometimes transform themselves into animals simply for the purpose of traversing great distances quickly. They may also transform in order to wreak havoc on others, as well as their identity will be hidden and they'll be able to escape quickly if necessary. Now, they curse people and cause great suffering and death, one Navajo writer explained. At night, their eyes grow red like hot coals. It is said that if you see the face of a skinwalker, they have to kill you. If you see one and know who it is, you will die. If you see them and you don't know them, they have to kill you to keep you from finding out who they are. Skinwalkers are also telepathically linked with each other, enhancing their coordination during hunts and fights, but allowing little or no privacy at any time. Now they can also copy animal or human voices to lure victims to feed on. They generally copy the sound of a human that is in need of help, so make sure you don't get tricked. Coming in at number 10 is the Wendigo. A Wendigo originates from a folklore of Plains and Great Lakes natives as well as some First Nations. It's based in and around the East Coast forests of Canada, the Great Plains region of the United States, and the Great Lakes region of both the United States and Canada. Now sometimes Wendigos are described as exceptionally thin, with the skull and skeleton pushing through its ash-colored mummy-like skin. Other stories describe the Wendigo as a well-fleshed giant who gets proportionately larger the more it eats. According to other legends, the Wendigo has a pointed or animal-like ears with antlers or horns sprouting on its head. A Wendigo's eyes have been described as sunken or glowing like hot coals. Sharp and pointy teeth, extremely bad breath, and bodily odor are often traits of a Wendigo. It is usually, but not always, endowed with powers such as superhuman strength and stamina that allows it to stalk, overpower, and devour its victims. Wendigos are usually credited with exceptional eyesight, hearing, and sense of smell. They're said to move with the speed of the wind and have the ability to walk across deep snow or even over open water without sinking. Now it's said to invoke feelings of insatiable greed and hunger, and the desire to eat other humans, and propensity to end people's lives in those who fall under its influence. Number 9. El Chupacabra. The El Chupacabra is a legendary creature in the folklore of parts of the Americas. In 1975, a series of livestock killings in the small town of Mocha, Puerto Rico were attributed to the vampire of Mocha. Now each of these animals were reported to have its body bled dry through a series of small circular incisions. A few months later in August, an eyewitness reported seeing the creature in Puerto Rico, where as many as 150 farm animals and pets were reportedly killed. Now physical descriptions of the creature vary. In Puerto Rico and in Latin America, it is generally described as a heavy creature, reptilian and alien-like, roughly the size of a small bear, and with a row of spines reaching from the neck to the base of the tail, while in southwestern United States it is depicted as more dog-like. Shortly after the first reported incident in Puerto Rico, other animal deaths were reported in other countries such as Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Peru, and the United States. Coming at number 8, we have Bigfoot. Bigfoot, also commonly referred to as Sasquatch, is an ape-like creature said to inhabit the forest of North America. North American settlers started reporting sightings during the late 1800s and into the 1900s, with the occasional finding of footprints, sporadic encounters, and even of grainy photos and videos adding to the mystery. Bigfoot is often described as a large, muscular, bipedal ape or human-like creature covered in black, dark brown, or dark reddish hair. Descriptions estimate the height of roughly 6 to 9 feet, with some depictions having the creature standing as tall as 10 to 15 feet. Some alleged observations describe Bigfoot as more human than ape, particularly in regards to the face. Common descriptions include broad shoulders, no visible neck, and long arms. Now, some alleged nighttime sightings have stated the creature's eyes glowed yellow or red. In 1971, multiple people in the Dalles, Oregon filed a police report describing an overgrown ape, and one of the men claimed to have sighted the creature in the scope of his rifle, but could not bring himself to shoot it because it looked more human than animal. Now, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of Bigfoot sightings, and Bigfoot has come somewhat of a pop culture figure, as there are TV shows, movies, and fan clubs dedicated to him. Number 7. Lizard Man. In the folklore of Lee County, South Carolina, the Lizard Man of Scape or Swamp is an entity said to inhabit the swampland of the region. First mentioned in the late 1980s, the sightings and damage attributed to the creature yielded a significant amount of newspaper, radio, and television publicity. On July 14, 1988, the Lee County Sheriff's Office investigated a report of a car damaged overnight while parked at a home on the edge of Scape or Swamp. The car reportedly had tooth marks and scratches with hair and muddy footprints left behind. Sheriff Liston Truesdale noted that this was the start of various claims that eventually turned into a story about a lizard man in the swamp. Prompted by the news of the vehicle damage, local Christopher Davis reported to the sheriff that his car was damaged by a creature he described as green, wet-like, about 7 feet tall, and had 3 fingers, red eyes, skin like a lizard, and snake-like scales 2 weeks earlier. According to Christopher, he was driving home from working a night shift at a fast food restaurant when his car got a flat tire. After fixing it, he saw a creature walking towards him. He got in his car and began to drive, but the creature was soon on top of the car. He applied the brakes, causing the creature to roll off the car, giving him enough time to escape. Number 6. Loveland Frog. In Ohio folklore, the Loveland Frog is a legendary humanoid frog described as standing roughly 4 feet tall, allegedly spotted in Loveland, Ohio. In 1972, the Loveland Frog legend gained renowned attention when a Loveland police officer reported to a colleague that he had seen an animal consistent with the description of the frogman. After a reported sighting in 2016, the second officer called a news station to report that he had shot and killed the same creature some weeks after the 1972 incident and had identified it as a large iguana that was missing its tail. Now, according to various legends, the creature was first sighted by a businessman or traveling salesman driving along an unnamed road late at night in 1955, with some versions of the story specifying the month of May. In one story, the driver was heading out of a Branch Hill neighborhood when he spotted 3 figures standing erect on their hind legs along the side of the road, each 3 to 4 feet in height, with leathery skin and frog faces. In other versions of the story, the creatures were spotted under or over a poorly lit bridge, and one held a wand over its head that fired a spray of sparks.
A solo camper's GoPro captured the heart-stopping moment a mountain lion stalked her campsite, proving you might not be the only predator around the campfire. In late 2021, outdoorswoman Nadine was backpacking in a national park in Arizona and set up camp at a remote site called Grass Shack. During the day, she noticed deer in the area acting kind of agitated, a sign that she later realized meant a big cat was nearby. Nadine heard something rustling just outside her camp, and she started recording, showing a huge mountain lion clinging to a tree trunk only 10 feet away, eyes fixed on her. The footage shows the lion's glowing eyes and muscular silhouette as it crouched, ready to pounce. Nadine can be heard speaking in a steady, firm voice, a tactic to assert dominance, while slowly reaching for her bear spray. Quote, "I lobbed rocks with one hand and had bear spray ready in the other," she later wrote. Eventually, a flock of scrub jays flew over and started to bother the cat, leading to him climbing down from the tree, and eventually he left and she packed up and hightailed it out of there. Park rangers later closed that campsite, calling it the most alarming human mountain lion encounter in decades. This experience is just a reminder that out in the wild, you are a part of the food chain. A group of friends on a camping trip captured something otherworldly streaking across the sky, a real UFO caught on camera in the wilderness. In January 2024, 5 campers were goofing around at a campground in Argentina, filming a slow-motion video for fun. They set up a phone to record one friend jumping to headbutt a volleyball, intending to play it back in slow-mo, and the group laughed and carried on, thinking nothing of it, until they watched the footage later that night. In the video's background, a bright, fast-moving object zips across the twilight sky at an impossible speed. In real time, it was too fast to notice, but slowed down, the object is clearly visible shooting behind the trees above their heads. It wasn't an airplane, no engine sound or blinking lights, and it wasn't a meteor, the path was straight and controlled. Baffled, the campers shared the clip online where local news picked it up as a possible UFO sighting. The object appeared to be 40 meters wide and emitted no sound, and one thing is certain, that That night, these friends captured something uncanny in the sky, turning a casual camping trip into an X-Files episode. A shaky camcorder video from 2001 might be one of the best pieces of Bigfoot evidence ever recorded, captured during a youth camping expedition in the mountains. The footage, known as the Marble Mountain Bigfoot video, was filmed by a youth group leader named Jim Mills on a trip in Northern California. Jim had led a dozen teens into the Marble Mountains wilderness for a week of backpacking. One evening, the group stumbled upon a strange makeshift shelter of broken tree branches that looked like a giant nest or hut. Puzzled, they kept their camcorder rolling. Soon after, one of the campers shouted and pointed at a ridge about 150 yards away. The video, which you can watch on YouTube, shows a tall bipedal figure walking upright along the ridge against the sunset. In the zoomed-in footage, the silhouetted figure appears massive and ape-like, swinging its arms as it walks. At one point, it even stops to crouch or possibly pick something up, then stands tall again. The kids can be heard shouting in astonishment, realizing that they might be seeing the legendary Bigfoot. Jim filmed the creature for a full 3 minutes, making this one of the longest Bigfoot videos on record. No human hiker would be casually strolling off trail at dusk in that treacherous area, and certainly not in a bulky gorilla suit in 2001's summer heat. Bigfoot researchers later analyzed the clip and noted the figure's smooth, long strides and enormous size, consistent with Sasquatch sightings. Imagine waking up in your camper van at 2 a.m. to realize someone outside has locked you in from the outside. A nightmare scenario one van lifer experienced and recorded. In September 2022, a travel vlogger named Sean was stealth camping in his van on a quiet roadside in Cornwall, UK. He was trying to sleep discreetly in a no parking zone, all lights off, when he heard a car pull up and faint shuffling around his vehicle. The next morning, to his shock, the van's doors wouldn't open. As he stuck his camera out the window, he showed that there was now something wrapped around his handles, effectively locking him in from the outside. At the end of the day, he's not sure what intention the people had for him or his belongings, but I think we're all just glad this was the worst thing that happened. A lone backpacker's night vision camera accidentally captured pairs of glowing eyes watching him from the darkness, and he didn't even realize it until he reviewed the footage. In April 2019, a YouTuber named Jason of the Appy Mountain Truckers channel embarked on a solo camping trip in the Appalachian Mountains. He filmed his overnight adventure for his channel and unknowingly documented a mystery lurking just beyond the firelight. In the video, Jason sets up camp and settles in for a quiet night, and around 9:30 p.m. he records himself hearing a strange guttural howl echo from a distant ridge. Quote, "I've never heard anything like that," he tells the camera, describing it as a mix between a pig's snort and an ape's hoot, almost like, quote, "how velociraptors communicate in Jurassic Park." Unnerved but unable to locate the source, Jason eventually crawls back inside. A few hours later, past midnight, he wakes up again hearing crunching footsteps circling the campsite. Jason wakes to faint noises and briefly pans his flashlight around, seeing nothing, but in that brief moment, the camera captures what Jason's naked eye missed: two sets of fiery white eye shine staring from the edge of the forest. The reflective glow suggests large animals, likely wolves or coyotes, observing him quietly in the dark. Chillingly, Jason didn't notice the eyes at the time. He spoke to the camera about the footsteps, chalking it up to maybe a deer, and went back to sleep. It was only later, when viewers pointed out in the comments, that he realized predators had been watching him. Jason made it through the night, oblivious, but when he saw the footage, he admitted it gave him chills knowing how close unseen creatures came to his camp. A man camping in an RV awoke to the sound of a woman screaming. Travel vlogger Tom was in a remote area of Arizona camping in his truck camper amid desert silence. His video, however, shows how quickly things went from serene to dangerous. Around 3 a.m., Tom hears the screams, which wake him up, and he goes out, camera recording, to see what is happening. As he goes out to see if she needs help, he ends up hearing shots fired. Of course, this completely freaks him out, and he begins to retreat back inside of his RV. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, this was not the end of the nightmare. As Tom is inside the RV, he then hears a banging on his RV door. He continues to hide inside of the RV when he hears this mysterious person begin trying to break in. This is all pure nightmare fuel, and I can't even imagine how terrified he must have been. In the end, the mysterious person does end up gaining access to the RV by breaking into the underbelly storage and crawling under the floor to get inside, but thankfully Tom had an alarm that began to go off as the intruder broke in, which ended up scaring him off and possibly saving Tom from whatever grim fate may have been entering the RV. In a final encounter that will send shivers down your spine, a camper documented persistent, eerie knocks on his RV door at night from an unseen visitor who simply wouldn't go away. YouTuber Tom from the Work Less, Enjoy Life More, the same RV camper we just talked about, had another disturbing experience while camping solo in a dense forest. Tom, I feel like camping just might not be for you. Tom sets up a camp in a secluded clearing and settles in for a quiet night of filming a camping vlog. Sometime in the evening, as he is cooking himself a meal, he begins to hear footsteps outside of his RV. These footsteps are persistent, and you can tell someone or something is walking out there. Throughout the night, the mysterious person continuously knocks on the RV. Some knocks louder than others, but all completely terrifying. Tom didn't sleep at all that night, and as soon as he was able, he got the heck out of there. And as he was leaving the site, he apparently saw a lawn chair where he believes the person was sitting in order to continue watching him all night. I don't know, it sounds like Tom needs to start staying in the city, alright? Let's do some hotel, some glamping, actually.